What's up, everyone? Thank you for joining this discussion and deep dive with James Feldkamp, who also goes by Jim Feldkamp. I'm wearing this West Point or Army hat, as you can see through video, because it's very fitting for this episode. But if you're not, I'll explain. Let's get into it. Jim Feldkamp was a U.S. Naval flight officer. He was a countermeasures officer and a navigator of the EA-6B, which was the U.S. Navy's carrier-based electronic attack aircraft. And we talk about his ability to deal with discomfort, as that happened so many times when in the armed forces, and Operation Desert Storm in 1991. But going back into his timeline, explaining it to you, from the U.S. Naval Reserves, he went on to become a special agent for the FBI. We talk about that as well. And just to touch on, he was a founding member of the Joint Counter Terrorism Task Force. In '07, he was even called to active Navy Reserve duty to help with communications for domestic and international affairs. But through and through, we get into even the Clipper race, which is sailing around the country to compete for first place. In doing so, Jim was a very competitive person, played sports when he was younger too, but has so much experience when it comes to life, lessons from it, and dealing with communication with so many different people, especially making amends and peace with discomfort itself. We get into everything, so enjoy this episode, and let's do it.
I have a dream.
It's one small step for man.
I am the greatest.
You want something, go get it. Period.
Jim, first place, I wanted to start because you have a wealth of experience and many different fronts in your life, which I do appreciate your time. I do appreciate you being here. I would love to know what got you interested in the armed forces, because I know you did play sports at Linfield University, right? And I do always see a corollary between sports and the armed forces and the disciplines with that. So I would love to know that entry point for you.
Well, I guess, I've always been interested in the military, and my dad got me into flying when I was really young. And, but with the, sports and the military, pretty much the same thing. It's all about teamwork, right? It's all about discipline and just basically developing a sense of camaraderie in a team or an organization in which you can excel. And so football or basketball or any, team sport is all kind of coordinated for that you have to work together to achieve your objective. And that's like the military too. I mean, you go through your indoctrination, as it were, and you're part of a team. And if you're flying for the military or if you're in the Army or, whatever, you can't do it alone. And I think that's what I kind of like about it the most is just the teamwork aspect of it. And you make friends for life. And I was just talking to my mom the other day about this and just what a great decision it was to join the military, because I'm from Roseburg, Oregon, right? Little old Pullman town. And I never really never had any interaction with African Americans or anything like that, because it's a small town in Oregon, until I went down to Pensacola for boot camp. And you gotta you're all thrust together and you got to work together and you got to achieve the common objective. And so it exposes you to different cultures around this country and different people, and you realize that everybody's pretty much the same, and it's easy to get along if you just kind of take it from the same perspective.
Wow. Yeah, I love that. I agree with the perspective point, because as we'll talk about in the conversation, travel has definitely done that for you as well, because I know travel can broaden your perspectives like crazy. But why did your dad get you into flying? Did he have a background in that or an interest, or how did that work?
Yeah, he had an interest. My father was in the Air Force just when he came out of college, and he didn't fly for the Air Force, but he probably just got excited about it. And when he was running the family business, he bought a plane to help go around Oregon to go make sales, and he just started flying, and I got into it with him. And so when I was flying around with him when I was 12 years old, I even went out and waxed his plane so I could go out and get another flight in, because I was just all excited about it. So it was a lot of fun. So I go and wash his plane, a little 172, a little 182. But I got my pilot license when I was 18, and then And then I just wanted to join the military, so I went off and did that.
Wow. Yeah, I've always been into a bucket list item of having flying lessons
Yeah.
because I just think it's like insane to be like flying through the air with this giant vehicle. But what does like a flying training consist of? Like, what did you go through when you were 18?
Oh, well, you got civilian or you got the military. Civilian is, you just go to the airport and say you want to learn to fly, so they get an instructor and they say, this is a plane. And military is kind of similar like that, but they start you off. You got to go through boot camp or what we call aviation officer candidate school, and it's just like the movie Officer and a Gentleman way back when with Richard Gere. And you got drill instructors yelling at you and beating you up and all that good stuff. And they try to basically force you out, drop on request, because it's a hazing situation. They want to make sure you can handle stress. And then when you get in a plane and you start, learning how to fly and learning other stuff, they continue to add stress on you. And it's a simple fact is that, having an individual add stress to see how you handle it is a lot easier than figuring out that you can't handle it when you're getting shot at, and that's what it is how can you handle the stress of combat and everything else in a controlled environment, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the ability to handle discomfort.
Yeah.
But in a controlled environment.
Discomfort, like what's going on here? What am I doing?
Yeah, like how did you when you went through that? Because I know like the movies are incredible when, especially comes to Navy SEAL training. Like,
yeah,
I've seen stuff with that, and I've also seen stuff with flying where like you have to learn how to breathe correctly in these like closed containers. So did you get it easily, or did you have to like work through a couple mistakes or failures when you did that?
Nobody goes through flight school without being unscathed. You have some good instructors and you have some less than good instructors, but they're all there to, make sure that the people they put forward to learn these, fly these multi-million-dollar planes are not going to, crash it or freak out, and remember we're flying on carriers too. And so it's a whole different ballgame. Instead of landing on an 8,000 foot runway, you're going to land on a 300 piece of floating steel, so it's a whole different.
Yeah. Yeah. I see. Yeah, exactly. You got to know what you're doing.
You got to know what you're doing. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and as I said in the beginning, you have a wealth of experience and expertise as you were in the naval forces, armed forces for 30 plus years. You're in the FBI, I believe it was for 15, or was that a little bit less?
Well, I was short of that, about 4 or 5, and then I got out and tried to run for office. Well, I did run for office, I just didn't win. But that's what happens. So
got it.
Make decisions in life, and you just pick up the pieces and move on.
Exactly. But in all of that, what would you say were some key takeaways when it came to working with that team and being within that arena of serving the country and being like the front of the line in a way? Because the things you were specialized in, it came from international security and foreign policy initiatives.
Yeah.
So like, I would love for you to explain that, but then also things you learned through the 3 decades when you were a part of it.
Oh, I guess, it's all, part of, who you are, so to speak. So being in the military, and then timing was right to join the FBI, and then 9/11 happened. And so all of a sudden you become an expert on terrorism. And then I, gave it a shot in politics, and then that didn't work out. So I came back on active duty, and I started doing international outreach for the military, working with other nations, going around the globe and having people share information. Share information to prevent terrorist attacks. And then I started teaching on the side, and that was kind of fun. That was rewarding, teaching students, because, my background is different than a lot of other instructors and teachers. And so I have provided different focus or viewpoint than a lot of academia does.
Yeah, I would rather learn from someone who's been a part of it than just someone who like learned it through a book. Not saying the latter is bad, but someone who was hands-on, as we'll get to, like one of your operations was extremely intense. Yeah. Like you were within it. So you have the most knowledge of what the topic consists of itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
I was on that point though, the operation Desert Shield, I would love for you to explain what happened in 1991, like pretending as though I was a student in your class, right? You're teaching about some certain things, and you come across this story. I would love for you to recount it and explain in depth what happened there.
Okay. You mean our first night strike? Is that what we're talking about? Yeah. So we've got to step back because Desert Storm happened January 17th, and so we were in the Gulf. I was on the USS Midway, which tells you how old I am now that my first boat is now a museum sitting in San Diego Harbor. But so we were on the Midway, and we got the notice that we call it the bubble was going to go up January 17th. And this was way before the internet. This was way before cell phones, way before a lot of stuff. So what they did is we called it, they slicked the boat. So there's no communications outside. And my skipper was the one, I was going to fly with him. And he said, Jim, figure out a strike package, because what our plane does and did is that we would fly with the strike package of about 4 bombers and a couple fighter planes, and we were an electronic jammer. So we would go in there and we would jam all the electronics of the enemy, the radars, the missiles, acquisition systems, and we'd shoot missiles at them and all that good stuff, trying to wipe out the ability for the enemy to respond. And so I had this great plan. I thought it was a great plan. That we were in the middle of the Persian Gulf, or the Arabian Gulf, and between Iran and Iraq, there's this huge oil transfer station or oil pump that they use to fill up all these super tankers, right? And the Iraqis own this huge platform out in the middle of the Persian Gulf. Well, it's a hunk of steel, and our plane, we didn't have GPS, and so what we would do is we would use radar locks on something that we knew the fixed location to help tighten up our navigation, so we knew where we were going, what we were doing. So I said, this is perfect, because what we'll do is we'll radar lock on this hunk of steel out in the middle of nowhere, because we know exactly where it is, which will sweeten up our attack profile and our ability to do our mission and blind the enemy. So I went down to the intel office, so to speak, on the boat, and our intel officer was named Lieutenant Lube, and so his call sign was Jiffy. And so I walked down there and I go, hey, Jiffy, this is our plan. We're going to go over this hunk of metal, then we're going to go into Kuwait, and we're going to jam all these people and shoot all these missiles, and then we're going to come on out. And I go, are there any anti-aircraft guns on this hunk of metal in the middle of the ocean? Now, we've been in the Persian Gulf for 4 months, and this is the problem with intel. Because he looks at me and he goes, we don't know. So what do you do? The boat is slicked. You can't communicate with anybody outside. I go and ask, the intel officer is like, you've been here for 4 months. They just didn't think about it. And so I went up and talked to my skipper, and in his colorful language told me to go back down and ask somebody else. So I walked back down and I asked Jiffy's boss, and they go, we don't know. We didn't even think about it. And so when I give this lecture, I always say, what do you do? Do you scrap the whole mission, or do you go betting on the roll of the dice? And so we talked around, and we said, basically, we're just one part of this cog of planes going on over, but if we screw up, and if we don't go, it kind of throws off the whole attack plan for Desert Storm. And so we go. And lo and behold, we go right over this hunk of metal, and the whole sky lights up. And it's really interesting talking about learning how to deal with stress and everything, how your body learns to deal with it. Because the first thing I saw when the whole sky is erupting, this is not like the old World War II movies where you can hear all the shrapnel and everything else because you're in a pressurized cockpit. Then all of a sudden the whole sky lights up, and first thing I thought to myself was, God, that's pretty. All these anti-aircraft shells are bursting all over us. And I thought, well, it just looks like the 4th of July. This is kind of cool. And then, of course, you hear this little voice in the back of your head saying, hey, dummy, these things are trying to kill you. And so the next thing as a brave aviator I would do is I lowered my seat in the aircraft, like an ostrich sticking his head in the sand, thinking if I can't see the missiles coming at me, the missiles can't see me, which, of course, was stupid. But so we bounced around for about a half an hour, and then had a successful mission, and then came on back and landed. But that's one of the things I tell everybody about when we're talking about Intel. Why doesn't Intel know about this, or Intel says this? It's kind of a dicey situation. Intel is not knowing everything. You're trying to find out the best information you can at that time, but sometimes you just got to go on, your gut feeling. And that's, and of course we could talk about Iraq in 2003 and what happened there, because we knew that Saddam had weapons of mass destruction and all that good stuff. Well, it turned out he didn't. But that's what the Intel, provided the information for policymakers to make those decisions. So sometimes it's right, sometimes it's wrong. It's just the way it is.
But I was going to ask you, when you train to be in stress and then you're in stress itself, like what's the difference? Because I know it's important to be like going as hard as possible in training to prepare for the worst situations. But like, what was the feeling?
Well,
Was it shocking?
yeah, it was surreal. It was surreal, I guess, the way to do it. And the more you're exposed to dangerous situations, the more your body, like I've seen it before, So that's what the training is all about: trying to expose you as best you possibly can for that moment if it arrives in combat. And then the more combat you have, the more comfortable you're feeling about what you're doing. Now, combat's combat, so there's always that option. The enemy has a vote too, and they can change things up. But the more you train, the better you're prepared you are for all sorts of bad things happening.
Yeah, and I want to resurface the question of lessons you learned, because I asked before with your experience, but then I want to know about lessons learned, because you talked about teamwork,
right?
You talked about the importance of preparation, but are there any top of mind things when it comes to your experience in the armed forces, of things you've learned when you were a part of it?
Well, I would think, like I mentioned, going down to Pensacola, Florida, and being exposed to a whole bunch of different people, different viewpoints, different races, and I think honestly, and I tell all my students that, I'm pro-military. I really am. I think, there's always good things and bad things in any organization, but to rip you up from your comfort zone and take you someplace that you just are, out of your element, and you learn to develop that. Now, I've got friends, because of what the military has taught me and places I've gone, people I've seen. I get friends all over the world now. No place you can stick me, I feel uncomfortable about, because, you can get by, because you know how to, handle different situations. You're comfortable in your own skin. And I think that's the main thing. The more exposure you have to different cultures and different people, and, everybody looks at a problem in a different way, because, that's what your background is. And so you kind of just gather all this information and you figure out how best to handle a situation. And of course, you got friends, my best friends, all from the East Coast, because I spent 3 years in Japan with them. I flew off carriers with them and all that good stuff. So you create a band of brothers. Kind of.
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to bring up the point of Japan, as I have a particular interest in going there, but I was going to ask you, because it's so amazing that, you hike these mountains, you go on these travels, and both like these ultra adventures and traveling itself require everything you learned within the Air Force and just like the armed forces, right? Like, from perspective shifting to like teamwork to persistence and being able to be comfortable in the uncomfortable. Like, when you're traveling, it's somewhat independent, but when you're hiking mountains, like, that's just uncomfortable as ever. And they always say, like, if you're at the top of a mountain, it's always hardest to breathe near the apex. And that's when you need to really, even though you're closest, it's the hardest. So for you, like, I would love to get the segue into this topic of conversation of knowing about what you did in Japan and like how Japan was, because then I would love to have that be like a floodgate into all these different adventures you went on and travels and stuff.
Well, I think, just to dovetail on to, talking about going to AOCS in Pensacola, Florida, when I got winged, our plane, then when I flew off Midway, the main station was in Whidbey Island, Washington. Okay. Well, I'm from Oregon, so that's the Northwest. I sure as hell didn't want to stay there, so I volunteered to go to Japan. Okay, and that's where the Midway was. Forward deployed is what we called it. That our aircraft carrier was in Japan, and so I went over there, and it was really interesting because there were a lot of people in our squadron that didn't want to be in Japan. They kind of got drafted to go to Japan. They wanted to stay in America. I was completely the opposite. And the first chance I got, I moved off the base. So we're in a little America on the naval base, right? And first chance I got, I moved off base and lived in the economy, in the Japanese economy. So I was the only white guy, or gaijin is what they called it, in a derogatory sort of way, in the neighborhood. And I never had so much fun because that was, like I said, way before cell phones, way before I didn't have TV, I didn't have a cell phone, I didn't have anything, but I just had this little apartment in the middle of, this village all by myself, and all the Japanese, I couldn't understand them, but, I had to go pay my bills in Japanese yen and all that good stuff. And you got by it. It was kind of fun because the Japanese really didn't understand me too much. I didn't understand them, but they were always polite. They were wonderful people. I loved the race. And I just had a grand time there. I just can't say enough good things about it, actually. So it was great.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like the minimalistic culture, the simplicity. They're so attentive to detail there too.
I had my little apartment. I literally walked down, I don't know, a quarter of a mile, and I had a little farmer's market there. And so I'd buy my veggies and all that good stuff. And then beyond that, I had my own bar. Or there was a bar there that I'd go in there, and I was the only gaijin there, and all I could say is, beer kudasai, may I have a beer? And after 4 or 5 times, they started accepting me as that strange white guy in the corner. But, I just enjoyed that too. It was just a lot of fun. Just going down there, just absorbing the culture. So we went all over Japan. The one thing I didn't do, I wish I would have, was go to the Sapporo Ice Festival, but we were on cruise the whole time, and that's the Northern Island. They literally build a city out of ice. And I never made it to a live sumo wrestling match, but we used to watch that all the time on TV, like a Monday Night Football game, the Officers Club. And we bet on these guys, and these guys are just monsters. They're huge. And it was just a really interesting cultural difference. Just enjoy the hell out of it.
Well, reason to go back, right?
Oh, God, I've been trying to get back. I was there, a tour lasts about 3 years. And so by the 3rd year, I was ready to come on back to the States. And I landed, and I remember about a month after I landed back in the States, I was like, can I volunteer to go back to Japan? Because it was so much more fun. I just enjoyed the hell out of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, for someone who doesn't like adventure as much, or even say like vagabond or get around, what would you say to them about how important traveling is to you? Because you've been to like an unbelievable amount of places, and it's really cool how infatuated you are with traveling. But like, what would you say to the lay person who doesn't get out as much because they're limiting themselves from seeing the world?
Yeah, you gotta get used to being uncomfortable. Things just aren't going to happen like the way you want. And I think that's the easiest way to put it. It's like, you don't know the language, and if you try, most people in that country will cut you some slack. If you're trying to order a coffee in German or a beer.
Yeah, they respect it. Yeah.
They respect your trying. Now, of course, you're butchering the language, but I have never felt uncomfortable any place I've been. Just because, I'm willing to go out there and just expose myself. Of course, I'm 6'1", I don't have to be too threatened to buy anything. But but I just find that most people, most cultures are pretty welcoming, and it's a lot of fun. And especially if you get into the culture, you just don't go to hop on a bus and travel your little places, but get lost down the back alley streets. That's what I like the most. It's just getting lost, just kind of hanging out and just, trying to have a conversation with the locals and read. It doesn't hurt to read up on the history. So if you do see somebody that speaks English, you can talk to them about their history, and they always appreciate that. Instead of being an ugly American and showing up, it's like, why doesn't this work the way I want it? It's like, let's talk about, the history of Slovenia or Slovakia or wherever you want to go, and, which I find just fascinating.
Yeah, which is a sense of empathy in a way too, which leads to, you can even say respect, because like you understand where things derive from, and it eliminates, maybe that's where that perspective shift comes from, because it eliminates all bias that or perceptions that one might have.
Yeah.
Because I agree with you too. When I travel, I want to go on a path that hasn't been used and goes into the middle of nowhere that they don't have a map yet for. It's
Right.
just interesting.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of history. I mean, so I just love reading about different cultures, different periods, and all that good stuff. So after 20 years of teaching and reading history, I got a pretty good grasp of all cultures around the globe, and it's easy to pick up, know where I want to go and what I want to read about these cultures. So it's a lot of fun.
I would love to know what your favorite history books are.
Oh God. Depends on. I mean, just depends on what you want to read on. I just finished one called the Dark Ages, which was written about 100 years ago, just about and most people don't understand the Dark Ages, but it is Game of Thrones. It is literally the Game of Thrones, and you wouldn't believe how ruthless it was. And so all of France and England, and so Charlemagne and all that good stuff is pretty fascinating, and how those countries, Germany and France, and build up, and then I'm being military and teaching terrorism. I read a lot about civil wars and all that good stuff, and how different cultures handle the environment. But Teddy Roosevelt, I love reading biographies about great people. Is it the time that makes the man, or man that makes the time? And I can always tell you different examples of some guy just steps up and changes the world. Churchill's a classic example. But if you had to read something, there's a good book called What If? And it's basically, what if this would have happened? How would the chain of events change? And the classic example is Churchill. When he was in New York City back in the 30s, he stepped off, and being Britain, he looked the wrong way and crossing this crosswalk, and he got hit by a taxi cab driver. And they said if the taxi cab driver was going 5 miles an hour faster, it would have killed Churchill. So if Churchill was dead, he would have been prime minister, and they would have said this other guy named Beaverbrook would have been prime minister, who wanted to surrender and tried to come up with some sort of peace negotiation with Hitler. And that, of course, would allow Hitler to take over Russia, and the whole world would have been different. So just those little things,
Wow.
Turn on a dime. And that's what
That's extremely fascinating, and I absolutely love that quote. It's not the time that makes the man, or man that makes the time.
Yeah.
That's a thought-provoking quote right there.
It is.
That's good. And this might be a very specific question, but along with books, would that be one of your top quotes? Because I would love to know, like, maybe some like quote or mottos you really hold true to live by for yourself.
Well, Churchill's one of my favorite because he just has all the quotes in the world. If you find yourself going through hell, keep going. That's one of his classics. So there's tons of quotes. I
love that one. It's all about persistence too. Cause I'm big on biographies and autobiographies. Behind me, if individuals are watching this on video, like I have stuff related to sports. So RG3, Tim Tebow, Victor Cruz, Dwayne Wade, all those guys. But then I have like Leonardo da Vinci, Benjamin Franklin. I think Walter Isaacson is a great reference when it comes to writers about people. Just does a crazy good job. But alongside and detaching from like favorites from books and travels and quotes, I would love to hear about the certification you got with diving, because along with like some mountaineering or like ultra adventures, you can consider like diving one of them. Did that come from like training in the armed forces, or you picked that up after you detached from it?
No. My dad, God rest his soul. I'm the youngest of three brothers. And so we were all Eagle Scouts, and, our dad wanted to expose us to hunting, flying, all that good stuff. So I started scuba diving when I was 13. And so,
wow.
So I've been traveling all over the world, and I've been diving every chance I get. Now, when we were sailing around the world on this race, and we got pulled into the Philippines because
before you keep going, can you mention the exact race that was too?
That was a clipper race around the world. And so basically I'll finish the diving thing and I'll tell you about the race. But
okay.
So So we're stationed in the Philippines. I want to go dive some wrecks, and all of a sudden they said, "Well, we can't allow you to dive because you don't have a wreck qualification." Well, I've been diving for 40 years, and I went to Truck Lagoon 2 years ago, which is basically the ultimate wreck diving place in the world, and that's where we surprised the Japanese in World War II and sunk like 30 or 40 of their boats. And so we dove all through these sunken ships and everything else, and then I also got a qualification to be a archaeological diver in St. Augustine. But I didn't have the qualifications from Patty to go wreck diving anymore. So now I've got to go down to Mexico in Cancun. I'm going next month to get my wreck diving qual, which is just a way for Patty to take more money from me. And Patty's the, scuba diving. What do you want to say? Scuba diving authorization organization. And so they come up with all these things to, charge you more money. And so I got to go do that. But it is what it is. So you got to just go with the rolls. That's flow sometimes.
That's amazing. You went all those years without having one.
Yeah, I just had my open water, and I've been sailing off the Great Barrier Reef or diving off the Great Barrier Reef, diving the Seychelles, diving Truck Lagoon. All of a sudden, I realized, well, you're not qualified to go, dive a wreck. I'm just like, really? Are you serious?
Well, with the Great Barrier Reef, what was it like to see the coral reef structure?
I loved it. I mean, I was on a liveaboard. So I went off of Cairns, however they pronounce it. And I've been to Australia several times, and it was a great place. And so we went on board this liveaboard, and we dove twice a day for about 10 days. And, it was great. Just the Great Barrier Reef was fantastic. And, that's before global warming, all that stuff kind of rotted it. But, yeah, I just enjoyed the hell out of it. And where's the other good places? Just, everywhere. Just.
Yeah, that's on the list as well, and I know a friend will be there at the end of this year. It's something to see before it really fades, and hopefully it doesn't. But it seems like it's inevitable now, sadly.
Who knows?
Yeah, exactly. But on the point of the Clipper race, to resurface that one again, I mean, racing around the world, people are probably like, what the heck? Like, I would love to know what that consisted of.
Well, just like everything else, we used to say in the military, I'm just Forrest Gumping my way through life. I'm just like Forrest Gump.
Amazing movie.
And so I was, I was out of the Navy. I retired out of the Navy. I was teaching, but I was pretty bored. I was as an adjunct. You're part-time, so you teach one course a week. And then all of a sudden I took my daughter to Machu Picchu. So we climbed Machu Picchu. And for some reason, artificial intelligence, kind of knew I liked travel, and all of a sudden I got this post on Facebook that says Clipper race around the world, and then the caption was, more people climb Everest than circumnavigate the world. And I thought, well, I'm in. I want to do something most people don't do, and I've never really sailed that much in my life. I flew off carriers, but I never sailed a boat. And so I signed up, got approved, and all that good stuff, and so went over to England and got trained up for about 4 weeks, 4 different phases. And then went back to England September 1, and we sailed out, and we went from England to Portugal to Uruguay to Cape Town, South Africa. Now we're racing, 11 boats are racing. Okay, so these are 70-foot clipper ships, masts and everything else, and all you do is sail. So there's no motor on, well, there's motors, but you don't use the motors, only for pulling into port. And so you have these 11 boats, and you're sailing 1,000 miles from anybody else, and you're racing as fast as you can. You get to the next port, and then you party like a rock star, and then you hop on a boat and go to the next time. And so we go from Cape Town to Australia, and from Perth to Sydney, Australia. Then we were going to go to China and have 3 ports in China, but then the Wuhan hit, or the COVID, and so they converted us into the Philippines, and that's where we're stuck. And then, after about a month in the Philippines, they said, we got to postpone this race. So everybody going.
Wait, so you were mid-race and it stopped?
Yeah.
Wow.
We were mid-race when it stopped, and because we're going to hit 3 ports in China, then go across the Pacific to Seattle, and then through the Panama Canal, through the Caribbean to Bermuda, and then back to England. And everything just put on hold. And so we've been sitting around for a year waiting. And hopefully it'll kick off in August again. And because you sailing halfway around the world, there's nothing to brag about that. You got to sail the whole thing. And so
That's true.
yeah. And once again, I was the only English or American. Wow, I was one of the few Americans on board my boat. So I had Austrians, English, South Africans, Mozambiques, Egyptians, and so you get friends all over the world now. And so my whole plan was to finish this race and spend about 2 months couch surfing around the globe with all my friends, but didn't happen. This is the way it works sometimes.
Yeah, that I mean, to stop something of that magnitude is probably extremely tough.
Yeah, yeah. And they it's true. I was telling my mom this today actually that before I took off on this race, I was talking to somebody who had completed it already, and they go, by the time you get to Transit the Pacific, you're a broken man. You are just beat up, and the only thing that's keeping you going is pride. And that's true because by the time we got the Philippines, I was just a physical wreck because you're hoisting 2-ton sails and trying to battle the wet elements and everything else. You're cold, you're wet, you're tired the whole time, and it's what they call level 2 fun. It sucks when you're doing it, but it's great to talk about when you're done. Because most people don't do it, and so that's what I do. And so hopefully we'll get back to the Philippines in August and finish this thing off.
Yeah, that would be incredible. Seriously. Then you could talk about it.
Then I can brag about it. Maybe I get a free beer out of the deal.
Yeah. On the point of liquor, I do want to get to the winery stuff on your end. But before I do, I asked this question once before to a couple individuals who were in the military, but for you, when you have those moments of like extreme discomfort and you want to give in, you said pride is something that'll keep you going, especially for the Clipper race, but like, is that generally for all moments when you really have to like push onwards and go the extra mile? Or what would that like term or thing be that causes you to like move forward?
Well, like with Churchill, we mentioned Churchill's quote, there are days, and there have been days and weeks and months where your life, just goes south. And the best and it's true that because of the training in the military, especially during boot camp or aviation officer candidate school, you just want to make it to breakfast, and then you make it to lunch, and then you make it to dinner, and then you start the next day, and then you do it again. Mm-hmm. And time heals all wounds. And so, when you think your world is just, gone to hell, it probably has, but it doesn't mean you got to end it. You just got to get up the next morning and just make it to breakfast, and then make it to lunch, and make it to dinner. And that's, you shorten it down to, this is my goal. I want to make it this far, and then worry about everything else later.
Yeah. But then, yeah, exactly. It's a fine balance between, you setting these long-term standards or like accomplishment goals, but like when you're amongst the muck, not even kind of looking at that, just saying like, all right, breakfast, lunch, dinner. I think that's powerful, and it's a interesting hopping point as you go from something as intense as that to wine-related things. But nonetheless, I do want to touch on that because it seems as though you're really into, along with traveling, is stuff related to liquor or beer or not. Yeah, listen, we're all into it. It's soothing. But I saw a ton of things in doing a deep dive on you that you're big into wine. Why so? And I would love for you to bring up the family business too, because I did not know about that.
Yeah.
Is that related to wine or no?
No. We'll start with family business. My grandfather, long story short, was retiring from Minnesota. This is the family lore. And he was driving out to the Oregon coast to retire. He was a big farmer. And then he lost everything in the Depression. And so he found himself in my little town, Roseburg. And he met a guy that was working hauling milk to people, retail. And they started a dairy. And so my grandfather started the dairy. My dad took it on over. And then my brothers took it on over. And so it's called Umpqua Dairy. And my brothers have done a great job. Won best ice cream in North America last year. So we make good ice cream.
Whoa.
Yeah, we're pretty darn proud of that. And so, all credit goes to my brothers because they've done a great job. Then I just went off. I was a black sheep, so I went off and joined the military and then the FBI. But so one time when I was in Oregon, where I live used to be a big timber capital. We used to chop down lots of trees, right? But because of the environmental spotted owl issues and all that good stuff, they stopped that and we kind of pivoted and started growing a lot of wine. So we make really good wine in Oregon, really good Pinot Noirs. And it was always fun to drink. But then one time I was back in Virginia and I was on a date, and we swung by this vineyard, and the guy that was pouring wine was having such a fun time because he'd have like 12 people and he'd pour wine and tell about the wines and all that good stuff. And I said, well, I'd like to do that. And so I went up and I applied and got accepted. And I really didn't know much about, wines per se, but I just enjoyed meeting people and talk about the wines and pairing. And then I started getting into it. And then I, got my sommelier level 1, which, I know how grapes grow now. But, it's one of those things that you just kind of go with it and see, how you like it. And so I do like it. I'm not an expert by any means, but I drink lots of wine and I compare it with good food. But that's
yeah, exactly.
And you find a little hobby, and that's what it was. That was a little hobby, and you meet a lot of interesting people. Like I mentioned, I was a archaeological diver now, and the only reason I got that is because I was pouring wine for a guy that was an archaeological diver, and he said we found a shipwreck off of the St. Augustine, and I said, "Do you want volunteers?" And he goes, "Yeah." So I flew down there on my own dime and got the qual, and now I'm an archaeological diver. So I guess that just points out you don't know who you're going to meet, and having opportunities like pouring wine for people provides you avenues in which to meet different people from different backgrounds, and it's a lot of fun. I enjoy that. I enjoy going out and meeting different people.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a great way to live, because things can be somewhat structured, but to live according to like the flow of the universe and let things come to you. Because imagine if the what if you brought up, like what if you didn't meet that guy, you never would have been diving in all these places and being
Absolutely.
an archaeological diver. Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, to the point too of the family business, I didn't know it was that Monumentus, which is just an amazing achievement, which with your brother, but and your family to be doing that for generational lines. But on the point of like diving itself and the winery stuff, I'm big on Pinot Noir too. I mean, I love the wines to settle yourself late at night. They say it's like a key to longevity in Italy,
Well,
one of
if
the
you have a
blue
few
zones.
glasses. If you drink two
only if you have a few.
it doesn't help.
No, in moderation with most things. But what would you say are the best pairings for you with the meals?
For me, I like
reds and whites.
I would say Sauvignon Blanc with ceviche. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's kind of a Peruvian, South American dish. Basically, it's raw seafood cooked basically in lime juice. So that's really good. You can look it up. Sushi with Pinot Grigio is good. I like I said, Pinot Noir, but a Melback with a steak is good. I make goat cheese infused steaks, so that's always pretty damn good. And then, it depends. I mean, I'm not a big rosé fan, but a lot of people like sparkling rosé for hot summer day or whatever. But you can just go through different. The heavier the reds, the more fatty meat you want with it. But when you're talking seafood, Viognier is not too bad. But I prefer Sauvignon Blanc with it's a crisper white. Not a big Chardonnay fan, so I don't even buy that. But
I know people that are big on foods and they're big on their wines. So them hearing this would be either resonant with them or good recommendations.
Yeah, but you can't go wrong with sushi or sashimi or ceviche with a good Sauvignon Blanc. I like that.
Yeah, but and the amazing thing too is like you could say like the framework of the Forrest Gump way. It's jokingly but somewhat in a aligned manner. You're living that similar life, because if you didn't go through all these things, you wouldn't have all these amazing things to talk through or talk about.
Right.
There's like so many fronts to pass down, and like just so many stories. I'm sure there's countless ones, but is there, like, knowing you a little bit more, is there like one story that many people might not know many people might not know of, or are there some things people don't really know about you that you would like to like put out into the world or express now?
Well, I don't know, but running the Bulls in Pamplona was a good story. Um, Once again, a buddy of mine, we were just sitting around in the ready room, and he decided to go do it. So we just, threw caution to the wind, and it's a long, involved story, but it was a lot of fun. We just showed up and flew over to France, grabbed a train down to San Sebastian, found the train up to Pamplona. Didn't realize we should have bought a hotel room, so we just slept in the park and then ran the Bulls.
That's incredible. That's also on the list. I mean, you're adding fuel to the fire here.
Absolutely, and that is a wild time. That was a lot of fun.
Well, yeah, that's like the ultimate discomfort. I mean, having bulls chase you, they have to be really at your paces and at peace when doing that, or else you'll get run over by one of them. I mean,
yeah, and when you're looking at 2 tons of Big Mac coming at you, and they're bred for bullfighting, you realize maybe this wasn't the smartest idea I've ever had in my life. But I survived. As I say, God takes care of drunks and fools, so I'm okay.
Yeah, that's incredible. But I would love to bring it somewhat to your, like, giving you the mic for you to be on stage. Is there anything like top of mind? I know you have the Clipper race coming up in August. Hopefully that comes to fruition. But is there anything else like top of mind that you've been like mulling over in your head, or any like realizations or anything that you would like to speak on now that we've reached a conclusion?
Well, I guess different phases of your life. When you're young and you want to see the world, or break off and start a career. Like for me, it was the military. And then I went to the FBI, and then I did teaching, and I ran for office, and just I guess what I tell my students is I have my little axioms of life. One of which is, don't be afraid to fail, because cynics are always right. Cynics will tell you, don't do this, you're not going to do good. And so there's a lot of people in the world that I call like crabs, that if you ever boil a pot of crabs, one tries to climb out of this boiling pot, the other ones will grab them and pull them back down. And that's what you see a lot of. People are afraid, and they sure don't want anybody else to succeed sometimes. It's very cynical, but cynics are always right, and you should not be afraid to fail, because like I ran for office, I failed, but it opened up a whole bunch of different doors, and you just don't know what tomorrow brings. But I can tell you one thing: if you don't take chances, nothing will change. So if you want to change the world, or you want to change your life, take a chance. Sailing around the world never crossed my mind until that thing popped up. And I just jumped on it like, a duck on a June bug. So, and now I'm thinking of, I live in D.C. now, but I'll probably be moving south to Florida because, I want to hang out by the ocean and, see what tomorrow brings. But, I also, another classic example is I also do enrichment speaking on cruise ships. And I fell into that from a friend. And so I've been on 7 or 8 cruises talking about Pirates of the Caribbean or the Vikings in the Baltics or whatever. Had opportunity to go to Havana, check that place out. So always, don't be afraid to take a chance. You'd be surprised how resilient you really are. If you fail, it's like, all right, well, pick it up and do it again.
Yeah, there's always a fallback option to something at least, so might as well go for it.
If you get an education, right, and you always pursue an education, you'll never have a problem. You'll just never have a problem. You just got to pick yourself up and see what else is next.
Yeah. I think that theme can apply to like just all themes of life, kind of like being a meta theme. But I appreciate the potency of that and you being open to share it. I think that's something to definitely take away. It's like a golden nugget to live by. But you're one to speak on it. You lived it, so that's amazing.
Yeah.
But I appreciate it. I appreciate it a ton, and all of the points that were brought up today, and to see you in the Clipper race in August, and to see what's to come with that. I mean, how many people exactly have done it? Do you know the stat?
No, I don't know the stat. I mean, this is a company, right? And it's pay as you play. So we had probably 600 people sign up. Now, only probably 70 people sign up to do the whole smash, the whole round the world navigation. But a lot of people would sign up for one leg or two legs, because they have to work or they have family and they can't get away for the whole year, But
Got to go for the whole thing.
got to go for the whole smash,
That's
It's hard to get a free beer saying, "Well, I sell halfway around the world." So you got to have a good story, You got to be able to embellish.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I love that. It's amazing.